Alrighty, the Amber series starts today with this video. It's a list of 20 amber fragrances, and I'm going to categorize the remainder in different styles. But today I've got an overview of amber fragrances, some new ones. The usual suspects are here, but a really great amber fragrances for you to decide to wear. If you're curious to learn about these amber fragrances, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Sebastian. I'm talking about amber fragrances today. I'll probably do about 5 of these videos, and I've also switched to airing these ones on Saturdays. Let's see if I can continue with the remainder of the list of videos that I'm going to do on Saturdays with 20 fragrances each in each video. I've already got the second one ready to go also, but the remainder will be done after I get back from my trip. But what I like to do is start the list here with a general overview of amber fragrances, and then move on to different styles like amber spicy, amber resinous, and you know, amber vanilla, things like that coming up. And what I've got here today are you know, amber fragrances that will focus on ambers, you know, things like resins, balsams, and vanilla notes together to create the amber accord. And sometimes there might be the usage of ambergris to create the amber style. I much prefer the resins, balsams, and vanilla combo much more than the ambergris, but sometimes, you know, sometimes you get fragrances that feature ambergris that also smells pretty good. But most of the time, I'm not the biggest fan of ambergris. It can go pretty funky. But my preference is the warm, spicy resins, balsams, and vanilla combo to create the amber accord. Those are some fantastic fragrances. So what we're going to do is speak about each one and then smell on camera to give you some more ideas about each fragrance. We're going to start off with the first one from a brand I've never spoken about on the channel. This is La La Love from the house of PERFUMEHEAD. It's featuring notes of smoked amber, vanilla absolute, cognac, Peru balsam, tonka beans, davana, incense, nutmeg, sandalwood, and black tea. For me, it smells like your typical amber fragrance with some vanillic touches. But there's a smokiness here and also some brightness that makes for a little bit easier. But I feel like the brightness and that smoky edge that's in here might be, you know, fighting with each other, but overall a really nice take on an amber. La La Love from PERFUMEHEAD. Let me know if you're familiar with this house. It's bright. As soon as I spray it, it's quite bright. It's very powdery. I could smell the vanilla already and the smoky touches. And there's just this really sexy brightness about it that is maybe caused by the tea that's in here and the cognac, because you get some booziness in there. And I find cognac in fragrances quite sexy to begin with. So this is quite delicious, except it's very similar to other fragrances and then some. Makes sense. A lot of amber fragrances will remind you of other fragrances. Like, for example, I've got Le Lion here, which I find really, really amazing. But that's not the very first amber. There's been other fragrances like it before. It's Chanel's take on an amber, if that makes sense. So moving on to a house called GHAWALI. It's Untold, this one right here. So this is a Middle Eastern house, and it features notes of amber, pralines, caramel, orange, patchouli, cedarwood atlas, eucalyptus, gurgeon balsam, cypriol, and bergamot. So this one's quite bright, and it's a bit on the gourmand side as well. It doesn't have the smokiness that the previous fragrance from PERFUMEHEAD has, so it makes for a lot more cozier. It's quite powdery though, and it's very resinous for sure. But really gorgeous, really like a vanillic gourmand take on an amber, which is quite nice since, again, amber is one of my favorite style of fragrances. I love that whole resinous, powdery, you know, balsamic take, vanillic take on the style of fragrances. I'm absolutely obsessed with this kind of a fragrance. And you can totally, you know, use this like a amber gourmand almost, but it's very resinous and has balsamic notes as well. And the orange is giving it that kind of orange glow to it, which is quite nice when that happens. But moving on to one of the staples, one of the earlier fragrances that I discovered that's amber focused. It's AMBRE SULTAN from the house of SERGE LUTENS. This is an amazing amber. It also reminds me a little bit of the now discontinued Absolute Pour Le Soir from the house of MFK, and also Mitza from the house of Dior's Mitza was so sought after. It's completely gone now, but this does remind me a little bit of it. If you're looking for that, check this one out. But this is Resins, Amber, Bay, Myrrh, Sandalwood, Benzoin, Coriander, Vanilla, Oregano. So it's spiked with a lot of aromatics and herbs in here, so it's kind of a different take on Amber. Really, really wonderful. I wore so much of this when it first came out. It was only available in 50 ml bottles, and the bottles were different, obviously. Now they've got these black label bottles, and they obviously launched 100 mLs as well. As soon as I put my nose on this, it's like, oh my god, familiarity. It's been 10 plus years, 12, maybe 14 years that I've had this fragrance or had a form of it, because it's been changed. But really, really wonderful. Amber, again, there's something great about it. It's warm and cozy, and, you know, it's perfect to wear in the colder days. You know, it's a really great warm hug kind of a fragrance. So if you're cold in the winter, just spritz some of that on. But the next fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is from the house of MFK, Maison Francis Kurkdjian. It's Grand Soir. So this launched in 2016, and it's been a hit for the brand for a long time. And I felt like it was a graduation and evolution of Absolute Pour Le Soir, which was more musky and animalic. This is a bit more universally loved. It's appreciated with a lot of folks. It's a really gorgeous take on an amber. It also has some slight gourmand touches. And for me, I also get a bit of cacao sprinkling on top. So it just gives me some kind of a chocolatey edge. But it's amber, benzoin, vanilla, tonka, and labdanum for the notes. And these are the kind of notes that typically go into creating the amber accord, which is one of my favorite styles. This also feels brighter. And also, it's not necessarily dark. Like, there's no smoky touches here, which sometimes people are turned off by, because that smoky touch can create a darkness in the fragrance. But here, it's all very, you know, resinous, balsamic, vanillic, and, you know, for sure, an amber, gorgeous amber from MFK. So for a lighter take on an amber in eau de toilette concentration, go to the house of Hermes for their upper end Hermescence collection. It's AMBRE Narguile, this one right here. So this is a fragrance that does remind of Wajan. It came way before, created by Jean-Claude Helena. So Parfums de Marly created a more gourmand take on AMBRE Narguile. But AMBRE Narguile features notes of amber, toasted sesame seeds, honey, along with like cinnamon and rum. It's a slight booziness there. For sure it's honeyed. There's a bit of a tobacco-ish touch in here, because it is, after all, inspired by the nargile, the pipe, the smoking pipe. But it's not like smoky and ashy. There's just a hint of it perhaps there. The idea might be there. It could be also subconscious. But again, I would call this a gourmand, but it's pretty wonderful stuff. I just wish it was a little bit more intense. Then if I want something different, I can go to, you know, Wajan. But some people like that airiness about this one. There's a bit of a rosiness in the background as well, which I always forget, but it's there when I smell it for some strange reason. But it's a gorgeous fragrance, except it's just quite light. But, you know, that's been done over and over again by many different brands, so people have copied it or inspired by it. But moving on to the very first amber fragrance I bought in my collection, now in a different form, because the bottles have been changed. It's Maitre Parfumeur Gantier's Ambre Presso, this one right here. Originally launched in 1988, featured in Scent Club as well. This fragrance, love it. It's one of my favorite fragrances. And hopefully, if you are an amber fan, you get to try this. The brand is now carried over at ZGO Perfumery. But this is vanilla. It features Peru balsam, Tolu balsam, ambergris, coumarin, nutmeg, cistus, labdanum, and myrtle and lavender. So it's quite aromatic and spicy, resinous and balsamic. And it features both of the balsamic notes of Peru and Tolu. And of course, it's got vanilla. It's one of the most amazing amber fragrances, and probably so far here the earliest amber fragrance that I've spoken about. And it was Jean-Francois Laporte who created this, who initially launched the brand L'Artisan Parfumeur. He sold it, then launched Maitre Parfumeur Gantier, and he created, I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best amber fragrances out there. It is powdery, very spicy, and of course balsamic and resinous, and it's just a really gorgeous fragrance. Really love it. Really, really love it. Stay tuned until after the outro. I'm going to talk to you about 3 more amber fragrances from that house. But moving on to the house of Tower Perfumes, it's Accour de Desert. I'm featuring Accour de Desert. You can go with L'air du Desert Marocain. I feel like Accour de Desert is the evolution of L'air du Desert Marocain. That one is an eau de toilette. This one's an extrait. And it's a bit darker. I find that this series, the L'air du Desert Marocain and Accour du Desert, very kind of dry. So if you like the dry fragrances, try this. But it's coriander, cumin, cedar, patchouli, ambergris, and resins. Really wonderful. One of my favorite amber fragrances. I used to wear a lot of this fragrance and I used to speak a lot about it. I mean, what happens is your taste change and things like that. But I still consider it one of the best amber fragrances out there. Especially this version. The bottle is pretty tight. I haven't opened this bottle for a while. But if you like the Eau de Toilette version, try that. It's lighter. This is the extrait version, so it's a lot deeper and richer, so it's a lot more intense. But still, that DNA is there. It's a fantastic DNA. One of the best fragrances that Andy Tower has created. Fantastic fragrance. I love it, actually. In fact, I really love this. It's been a while since I put my nose on it, but there is a petitgrain note in here, the greenness of the orange tree leaves. Man, you can get that along with the amber that's mixed in here. It's a fantastic fragrance. But moving on to the House of Diptyque, it's Benzoin Bohème in the new bottle. Have you guys gotten your new bottle yet? I feel like this will become like the original, because the original bottle was an amazing bottle. I don't also consider this one of the beastliest fragrances, but as a smell, it's one of the best. It's paying tribute to benzoin, which is a resin used to create the amber accord. So it's benzoin, Peru balsam, rock rose, which is labdanum, and spices according to the Diptyque website. But I feel like there's patchouli in this as well. It definitely acts like there's patchouli in this. But one of the best fragrances from the House of Diptyque. And it was a given that we're going to move it into this collection because they had it in that other collection with that other bottle. And previously they had a lot of other fragrances in that collection. They discontinued it all and they left Benzoin Bohème, and then it makes sense it's moved into this collection now. But it's a great fragrance. It's benzoin. It's a great resin amber note. One of my favorite resins. It's a bit vanillic, so you get a bit of a vanillic touch here, but not sickly sweet like other vanilla fragrances are, because it's not really vanilla. It's benzoin. But really great fragrance. It's Benzoin Bohème from the House of Diptyque. But moving on to Le Lion from Chanel. This is a great fragrance as well. I think it's one of the best from Chanel. And again, I will say it's not the very first amber ever. It's been done before. Remember, Maitre Parfumé Gantier was from 1988. Does this remind me of a Maitre Parfumé Gantier? A little bit. I don't think it's identical. There's another fragrance here that I'm going to talk to you about. It reminds me more of that. And that came before Le Lion as well. But I like Chanel's take on it. They have created an amber fragrance that's a bit animalic, a bit leathery. There's a little hint of Shalimar in there. There's a little hint of Coromandel. There's a little hint of Coeur de Russie. So it's got all these things going for it. But in the end, it's an amber. Very resinous, balsamic, and spicy. Really, really wonderful. Chanel's Le Lion is really great. I really love this. It's a great fragrance, but some people find it a bit animalic, right? You let me know if you find it animalic, or are you a fan of Le Lion? Put a comment down below. Okay, another fragrance that I discovered pretty early on in my journey of fragrances. It's Parfum d'Empierre's Ambre Rousse, this one right here. What a fantastic fragrance this is. Really, really great. So it's got amber, incense, leather, cinnamon, vodka, champagne, tea, coriander, birch. Now it doesn't give me ultra boozy touches, but there is a little bit of a boozy effect here. There's also a little bit of dried fruits effect in this as well. That gives me a bit of coziness. But the fragrance itself is quite cozy. It's very ambery, slight leather touches and smoky touches comes in. And it gives you a little bit of a holiday vibe as well with the fact that it has cinnamon. But it's a very festive take on the amber fragrance, and it's one of the best from this house. If you haven't tried this, please do. Before they changed it into this bottle, Javoy used to sell 500 ml bottles of this. I actually ended up buying one, and I still have it. I haven't used it. I like to collect things, but it's one of the best. I used to wear so much of this, and I'm glad I'm featuring it here. If you know Ambre Rousse, let me know. Put a comment down below, but let's move on to Parfumum Roma's Ambra Aurea, this one right here. So this is the one that reminds me of Le Lion a little bit. This is quite smoky. It's basically amber, incense, and myrrh. But you know what? Let's go back and smell Ambre Rousse, because I forgot to smell that. And we'll go back to Parfumum Roma. Yeah, there's definitely a dried fruits vibe. Like, I'm getting apricots in this for sure. Cinnamon hits you, and it's a bit boozy, but it's not your like rum or cognac or something like that. Maybe the dried fruity effect is giving us a little bit of that kind of, you know, aged fruit brandy kind of an experience. But man, Ambre Rousse is amazing. It's just a really wonderful offering. But Ambra Aurea, wow, it does remind me of Chanel Le Lion. And again, this is simply amber, incense, and myrrh. And what a wonderful fragrance this is. If you like more of a niche take on amber and you want to skip the Chanel, Chanel is good too, by the way, go with this one. This one to me smells a bit more like church incense, but it has those touches of Le Lion in here for sure. It's a bit more raw for me, and I like that about it. What an amazing fragrance this is. I actually bought this off of somebody that was getting rid of the collection. I'm happy. Now I need to start wearing it. But moving on to the next fragrance, going to the house of Clive Christian, it's Blonde Amber. This might be a bit more like a mass market take on an amber, although no, it has the touches of the types of ambers I'm speaking about here. But I think it might be a bit easier to take on an amber like this, because sometimes people might think amber can be overwhelming. This is blonde tobacco, tuberose, sweet dried fruits, rum, bitter orange, pink pepper, tonka, vetiver, and myrrh. What are your thoughts on blonde amber? And I guess the blonde is coming from the fact that they have blonde tobacco in this. Yeah, there's a very clean effect happening here. It doesn't really come off very much like all the resinous, balsamic, amber fragrances I'm talking about. But in the end, it's an amber, but it seems floral. The tuberose is quite prominent, and sometimes tuberose for me smells like laundry. I don't know why, and this is taken on a very laundry-like effect. It's very easy to wear, especially if you like the tuberose note. So that's Blonde Amber from the house of Clive Christian. Let me know your thoughts on that one. Let's move on to Jacques Fat with Belle Ambre. This one right here, created by Cécile Zerokian. Are you familiar with this one? Cécile Zerokian actually created the first 4 fragrances for Jacques Fat when the brand relaunched as a niche house instead of a designer. I wouldn't call this a designer anymore. One time it was a designer releasing fragrances. But this is featuring notes of amber, orris, leather, musk, vetiver, juniper, and black pepper. Have you tried this one? It's a lighter take on amber once again. But, it's got lots of powdery touches, leather under there as well, woods, and a bit aromatics thrown in and spices. In the end, it's a very wearable amber. It's much more ambery to me in comparison to the Clive Christian, but it's also an easier take on amber. So you've got the amber touches a lot there, but it's not like Ambre Aurea or Le Lion. It's simplistic to wear. Then moving on to the house of L'Orchestre Parfum, this is Ambre Cello, this one right here. So I felt like this was also an easier take on amber, not as smoky and resinous, but quite citrusy, and in fact it makes it very easy to wear. In the end, there's resins here, balsams as well, along with vanilla, but a really, really gorgeous take on vanilla. I did a video on this house recently. Go catch that video to learn a little bit more about this. But as far as an amber goes, this is really gorgeous. It's a great wearing amber, and I like the fact that it has all that freshness with the bergamot up top. You can totally smell it. So up next, going to the house of Les Eaux Primordiales. It's Ambre Supermassive, this one right here. Are you familiar with this one? This is a brand spanking new release. It's the new Supermassive. Previously, it was Vanille Supermassive. And this is also the extrait version of Ambre Superfluide. So if you're a fan of that one, you might like this one. I prefer this one over Ambre Superfluide. This is a lot more brighter to me, and I like that about it. It's also fruitier. So cinnamon, apples, vanilla, rum, honey, amber, peach, sesame. There's tobacco, saffron, musk, pineapple, rose. A lot of stuff going on in here. I really, really like this one a lot more than the original. But I still prefer Vanille Supermassive when you compare these two fragrances. But over the Ambre Superfluide and the Ambre Supermassive, I really like this because it's got a sexy vibe going for it. And it's got the DNA of Les Eaux Primordiales. Really gorgeous stuff. So that is Ambre Supermassive from the house of Les Eaux Primordiales. Then we're going to the house of Jeroboam. It's Ambre, this one right here. Are you familiar with this one? I like Jeroboam to make these 30 ml bottles that are easy to travel with, which makes them really fun to, just slip into a pocket or like a bag or something. And they make really great fragrances that pack a punch, This is vanilla, Peru balsam, patchouli, tonka, incense, musk, and geranium. I really like the addition of patchouli in a lot of fragrances, and I think the patchouli does some really great earthy things here with this fragrance. But this is probably not one of their more popular fragrances. The sprayer is also great. It sprays so good, so the juice itself sticks on you perfectly. But it's very balsamic for sure, and vanillic too. And there's slight smokiness here and aromatic touches, but of course I'm also smelling the patchouli. This is a balsamic vanillic take on the amber, but they're using all these notes to create the amber accord, the tonka as well, the incense, the of course the vanilla and the Peru. Really great. That might come off a bit more masculine, but I really love that one too. So that is Ambre from the House of Jeroboam. Let me know if you're familiar with that one. Now for a very easy to wear amber, go with Ambre Royal from the House of Ormond Jane. Are you familiar with this one? I think that Ormond Jane makes very classy fragrances, and they're also very elegant, but they're not like overwhelming and super concentrated. They just wear very elegant and just classy, like very British for sure. But this features notes of amber, ambroxan, osmanthus, iris, cedar, orchid, and musk. Let me know if you're familiar with this one, and are you a fan of the fragrances of Ormond Jane? Yeah, I can smell this already. It's a very clean take on amber, really clean. It's not balsamic, it's not very resinous. It's a bit molecular, lightly fruity from the osmanthus, powdery and woody, musky. Really, really nice. If you don't like that kind of heavy, real amber experience, definitely try Ormond Jane's Ambre Royal. But going to the complete opposite side here with Ramon Béjar, this is Deep Amber Extrait. Are you familiar with this one? This is so dark and smoky. It's a really, really intense take on amber. It's also an extrait, so really long lasting. So it's Labdanum, Styrax, Amber Extreme, Benzoin, Amber Core, Musk, and Ambrette. It's a bit animalistic, very raw, very strong, really long lasting, honestly. This is going to pack a punch big time. Ooh. Very powdery as well, but there's I think it's the amber touches that are in here that are a bit animalistic and musky. It's not necessarily featuring animalic notes. Does that make sense? So I think in their raw form, they could come off a bit overwhelming and a bit having a little bit of a funk. But so intense, really, really intense. I would spray that away from your nose, your mouth, because it's got that kind of a quality that it seeps in. So it's pretty intense. So that is Deep Amber Extrait from the House of Ramon Béjar. That is, I think, a newer formulation of that fragrance. All right, up next, going to the House of Rania J, it's Ambre Loup, this one right here. One of my favorite amber fragrances, and a brand that doesn't get spoken about too much. This is a indie niche house from France, and now the brand is carried over at Ministry of Scent. So if you're in the market for the fragrances of this house, go check them out and tell them Sebastian sent you. I'm a fan of this one and also their lavender, which is more of a fougere style, but this to me is a really balsamic take on the amber fragrance, and it also has a bit of a dough-like quality. It smells of like yeasty dough. To me, I don't know why I get that, but it's Labdanum, Gaiac wood, vanilla, Peru balsam, spices, cloves, oud, and cedar. Really wonderful offering. This is a great house, very underrated. If you don't know this house, do check them out. Yeah, very balsamic, but I think it's a textural thing that reminds me of dough with a little bit of the smell. But there's definitely that kind of dough-like yeasty smell in here, but with a lot of balsamic amber touches. Either way, that is Ambre Loup from the House of Rania J. Let me know if you're familiar with that one. And then we're ending the list with Tiziana Terenzi's Hail Bop, this one right here. So this to me does remind me a little bit of Le Lion from the House of Chanel, but for me, Le Lion is a lot smokier, and I feel like the Terenzi version is not as smoky, not as animalic, but very resinous, very balsamic, with spices and also aromatics thrown in. It's amber, labdanum, vanilla, cinnamon, geranium. Really, really great. Extrait de Parfum concentration, so much stronger than the Chanel, but really great take on the idea of Le Lion without the animalic quality. So if you're turned off by the Le Lion, maybe give this one a try. But yum. Just like the Le Lion, also there's a bit of a citrusy orange thing that's happening. It kind of goes away pretty fast. Well, when you first spray it, it's there. It gives you that kind of reminder of Shalimar, just like Le Lion does. But again, this to me reminds me more of Shalimar because Shalimar didn't have smokiness. So this has that kind of a quality. But either way, that is Tiziana Terenzi's Hail Bop, and that's the last amber fragrance for you guys. What are your thoughts on these fragrances? Let me know. Put your comments down below. Is there another amber that I should check into? I know there's a ton out there. And remember, I've already shot a second video that's going to air after this. So stay tuned for that one. I shoot my videos out of sequence, so just like they do in films. So stay tuned for the next amber themed video. It's a bit more gourmand take on amber, by the way. But let me know your thoughts on these fragrances. Put a comment down below and let me know of any ambers that I've missed. But just keep in mind, there will be like 5 videos total, I think, in this series of amber videos that I'm going to do. Either way, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. And as promised, I've got 3 additional amber fragrances in addition to the MAITRE PARFUMEUR at Gantier from the same house. In fact, they actually have another amber that I do not have here. But if you're a fan of this wonderful Ambre Presso, you should also check out, this is not this one right here, Ambre Mythique. A beastlier take on amber. Oh my god, it's so powdery, it's intense. Wait, yeah. Ambre Mythique is so resinous and very powdery and really intense and slight bit animalic. I feel like some people might be a bit turned off by that one because it's so overwhelming. Whew. But it's good. It's really, really great. It has a lot of aromatic qualities as well. Like there's also almost the smell of like geranium. It's overdosed in geranium or something. So if you like that idea, check out Ambre Mythique. Next is the latest in this collection of amber fragrances. It's Ambre Tibet. So Ambre Tibet is a different spicy take on amber. This actually features labdanum along with ambergris and vanilla, sandalwood incense, davana, eucalyptus, patchouli, rose, and geranium. I feel like the geranium comes up quite a bit in their amber fragrances. It's a different take on it. To me, it doesn't smell like Ambre Mythique or it doesn't smell like the original Ambre Presso. But then again, it's an amber. It's a different take on it, and it's inspired by their ambiance perfume called Ambre Tibet, basically. So a lot of folks said they wanted an actual human or person perfume of that ambiance perfume, so they created an ambiance perfume version of the fragrance. And the last but not least, it's Ambre Presso Ultime, this one right here. So Ultime is a more potent take on the original Ambre Presso. A very luxurious take on it, I feel like. Everything has just been intensified here, made very luxurious. If you like Ambre Presso, try Ambre Presso Ultime. It's so good. Very, very spicy, very aromatic. There's lavender here, there's geranium, but also balsamic and resinous. So good. The brand is actually carried over at ZGO Perfumery. If you are curious to discover their fragrances and their ambers, tell them Sebastian sent you. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today. See you guys later. Bye-bye.